In my time playing Building a Nation saves over the years, I've probably completed over 100 seasons, if not quite a lot more than that. But this year, something has happened that I genuinely never thought I'd ever see. So normally at this point in the recap video, I would tell you that after you've caught up on all the good stuff over here, hop over on stream and we're doing some transfer cookery, no doubt. And we are definitely still doing that is for sure. But something else is also happening. And that is literally all I can say for now. But the VODs of all the streams can be found on the second channel, linked in the description. You know where they are. Now, throughout this video, you may notice that the game looks a little bit different to what you're used to seeing on your default game. The reason for that is because I'm using the Mr. Teeny 2.0 skin, which was just released, the patched version for the newest update of the game, the most recent one. But I've been using it for the last couple of weeks. It is genuinely excellent and brings the game up to a standard that I'm much more happy with in terms of where things should be and how things should look. I'll put a link in the description so you can download it and try it out yourself if you like it. It is on Mr. Teeny's Patreon, but it isn't behind a paywall or anything like that. You can download it completely for free. And with the latest update, they also finally added back in the good news. Scouting filters are now savable and loadable. And you know what that means? There will be a pack of all of my filters that I use for all of the scouting stuff coming very soon. I'm working on another transfer room in out deep dive video regarding how your director of football actually interacts with it. And there's some really good stuff I found, but that's for next week. So I'll put the scouting packs and all that sort of stuff in that video as well. So keep an eye out for that. Right, that is enough admin. We have much to discuss. So coming into season 5 of Building a Nation with Wisła Kraków, things were finally starting to look a little bit easier for us domestically. We'd managed to win the league, not on the final day last season, and in fact in the end by 6 whole points. A positive chasm, but that was while playing in the Europa League. This year we knew that to take things to that next level, we had to be at the big boy table of the Champions League phase at the very least. But that of course would cause havoc on our squad as we have to be rotating quite a lot. We also took a very different approach to recruitment for this season, choosing instead to laser focus ourselves on certain targets that could either improve the squad or be absolute monsters for the loan farm, whilst in the background casting the widest net we've ever done solely to try and sweep up the last dredges of the amateur talent that we've been using up until this point. At one point our scouts had 1,700 players on their list. I think we've signed about 7 of them. But these players tend to start drying up around season 6, meaning that you want to get them while you can. So with us being very happy with our tactical setup this season, we were ready to tackle things from the very beginning. But first, a couple of highlights of players that you may want to keep an eye on this year that you're already quite familiar with. First up is the man that's finally knocked Angel Rodado out of action for this club, Adan Catalar. He's been fantastic. This season was, I predicted for him at least, a breakout year for us. Like last year was fantastic, but this year was the consolidatory year. That's a tough word to say. You'll notice his value is absolutely obscene. More on that in a minute, but he is very much one to watch. I predicted he'd get 35 goals for us this year. How close does he get? We'll see. Another in that same category is Dusan the Destroyer Obradovic, the Serbian midfield man who basically just does everything. And after signing in January, him and Jens completely revolutionised our midfield, and I think they're the reason we did so well. First full season for him, I was expecting big things. It's actually quite convenient that with the way the skin is laid out, my face cam actually hides the season stats so it doesn't spoil stuff for you in places. Don't worry, I'll move my camera when I need to show you that. Then there was of course Anwar Naeem, who you can see is actually under a bid. Do not worry, he is with us for the full season, and he's that one man that I really do think could do it at an elite club already. I love that he's gained so much jumping reach too. I assume he's just on the trampoline the entire time at the training ground. Now we come to the centre-backs. Andorran Ilian Rodriguez. He may be the best Andorran player I've ever seen, actually. And we just picked him up as not as a joke, but because he looked kind of interesting and he was in their squad. But he just seems to have it. He will head anything, frankly. I'm pretty certain he answers the phone by just nutting it. It's genuinely that bad. Be rude not to mention Big Jens, of course, the 23-year-old Norwegian, hoping he can get back into that national team squad, but him and Obradovic in that midfield for us, just running the show as that midfield pivot. But one other player I also wanted to spotlight, and you maybe haven't seen him for a couple of seasons, is the now mustachioed Hassan Ranjbar. Originally when he signed for us, he was 16 years old, from Norway, but what we really like about him is that passing and, I guess, his vision. His teamwork is also excellent, but the thing for me, he never seems to let us down. He's always been more marginalised since the arrival of Hertedal and those sort of lads, has been more of a rotation role, but there's something about the way that he plays. He almost never drops a rating below a 6.9 in a game. He's always just got something, despite those lack of physicals. He's such a reliable player on the ball, and he just contributes, and he's fantastic. So those are some players to keep an eye on for this season. And now let's actually get into that season, which actually swings us straight back round to Adan Catalar and the reason why he's worth so much money. And that is largely thanks to Tottenham Hotspur. As soon as the window opened for the big European sides, Spurs slapped £12 million on the table. But, you know, we're used to receiving quite large bids of that kind of amount for not very good players. So I said, Absolutely not. The best part was, Katala didn't care a tiny little bit. It just said he was happy to stay. Spurs getting mugged off in real life and in FM. But the weirdest thing is, because of the Club World Cup deadline for the transfer window, Spurs put 3 more bids in on the very same day, the last of which was £49 million. A level of desperation I genuinely don't think I've ever seen from an AI club before. Naturally, I still said no, because it's funny. And also because if they're willing to pay that amount for him, that's the very reason we should be keeping him. We can't play £49 million as a striker, but we can play a Dan Katala, or Catala. Intonation always gets me. And so as a result of that, his value is absolutely sky high, and did lead to me giving him a brand new contract on £16,000 a week, which he was more than happy to accept, of course, because of the interest from elsewhere. But frankly, yes, it made him our highest paid player, but 16 grand a week at this stage is absolutely nothing, particularly as it's a nice, decent length deal. Very happy with that, and we're just happy to keep him at the club because I felt that he was the man for us. But as far as transfers go, we actually did have a major goal this season, and that was to find a replacement for Dario Vandenbos, who'd left the club on a free transfer as his contract had expired, along with a few others. But we only really had Sohail Stapelfeld for that position, and I was still on the fence about him. We needed depth in that DM that can drop back and play centre-back. But before any of that, I signed Matteo Marabese on a free transfer from a team called Tau, I believe it was. And, I mean, for free, he may be a mercenary, but his attributes are too good to turn down, especially if I can loan him out. But even more important was the arrival of the best player probably I've ever signed at this age range, I would say, in my history of playing Football Manager. Some of you may have seen him at the very end of the last video, but if you didn't get that far, here he is. Stéphane Montparnasse, Frenchman, 18 years old. You're looking at his attributes and going, wow, he's a really, really, really good player. He's 18 years old. To be this good, this young, is absolutely astonishing. And we paid £4.7 million for him, 11 grand a week. The only downside is he does have a release clause of 7.75 million to clubs in the Champions League that are not from Poland, basically. A massive issue which we will have to try to find a way to get rid of before he is inevitably stolen from us. But he is just everything. As a number 10, he can pass, he can dribble, he can finish, he can touch the ball first, he can be flary, his off the ball is absurd, he's got pace, he's got acceleration, he's even got a little bit of tackling about him as well. He can do every job that we needed him to do, and my hope was that this was the year when he could really be that man that takes us to the next level with that midfield three of these. I mean, my goodness. Like, if you've got a player that's better than him at 18 years old, that you signed for less than that, I really want to see them. No, seriously. It's a player so good you could forget what day it is.
Hello, chatto! It's Saturday! No, it's
Not. What the hell? When has it ever been Saturday?
Stumbled upon a player that we'd forgot we'd already signed when he signed for us. Kwaku Ajeti, Ghanaian, centre-back/DM. Now, we'd actually signed him previously, but he'd only just joined us from RTD Academy on a free transfer. And he is very nice because solid in the air, decent defensively, but he can pass, and that is what we need for that player that's going to play DM/centre-back, and we hope that he can honestly be that man. Ironically, the first time we really decided to look in our squad to see if we had anyone that could fill that role, he'd literally signed for us the day before, and we hadn't even noticed because it was randomly in the middle of the window. So he was in for free, great value, love to see it. But then a couple of outs as well, as we did need to generate some money and let some players go free. And by free, I mean for £625,000. As Santiago Kubishin left to join Gornik Zabja, newly promoted, we felt that he was just going to get less and less game time. We took a loss on him, but that's okay. We've made money elsewhere. But the last out for this section is a bit of a sad one, but a player that we felt that needed to happen. We felt that now, especially with the arrival of Montparnasse, who we've nicknamed the Red Mumbler because apparently his name can loosely translate to that too, it's fantastic. He was going to be even more marginalised in the squad, with Stoya there as well, and we've got others, Mosquera. There's just always number 10s around, and Koziemka just seemed like he'd hit a ceiling, basically. And I felt that by not letting him play for us, it was not really fair on him. So when Pogon came in with a £2.1 million bid, I felt that it was too good to turn down. We'd actually accepted bids from top flight sides like GKS Katowice, but in the end, he actually chose to join Pogon, who'd been relegated, and play in the second tier this season. So how well that works out for him this year, we'll swing back round to later. And with that, the Super Cup beckoned, and we'd hoped for a better result than last year's Super Cup and had even more on the line facing our biggest rivals. Just 2 minutes in, Catalar showed exactly why there was so much interest in him as he latched onto a long ball, cut inside and finished beautifully for the early advantage. Early in the second half, Obradovic also gave the fans something to cheer as he curled a stunner from just inside the area. This man only scores worldies. 10 minutes from time, Catalar wrapped it up with our third after a nice cross from Kukanda, already off to a better start than last year, and we get to beat our rivals. What more do you want? Especially as we then dropped £475,000 on Olufemi John. Somewhat sight unseen in many ways. He was another transfer room in request, but we couldn't really see all of his attributes. We just kind of liked the colours and the ranges that we could see in the numbers. And then upon him actually joining us on the 17th of July, we were shocked by what we saw. The pace, the acceleration, the tackling, the marking, the crossing, the dribbling. He felt like the guy that could potentially finally give Jakub Krzyżanowski a run for his money in that position. But there was one slight problem with that. But again, we'll swing back to that, and it relates to player traits and how they interact with our tactical setup. But still, an incredible player, and for £500,000, you can't really complain. And that was actually all the transfer business we'd done when the league season actually started, as it kicked off in style away at Rakov, and the early goals were key once more. New man Monparouche drilled home a lovely strike on his league debut. 15 minutes later, Foreman picked up where he left off to slot home a nice strike across the keeper to effectively kill the game and give us the 2-0 win. But this team were looking like a dog on a leash waiting to be unhooked, so against Arca, we let them run free in the park and chase the ducks. 5 minutes in, Monparouche popped the ball into Katala, who somehow dummied 2 defenders to fire us in front. Before 20 had even been played, he'd grabbed another, this time quite literally stealing a goal from Obradovic as it was already crossing the line. But Dusan only scores bangers, so perhaps he would be thankful. Before the break, it got even better as Ranjbar's strike deflected past the flailing keeper to make it 3-0, but we still weren't done as 3 minutes later, Obradovic this time did get his goal, almost identical to his stolen one from earlier. Just seconds after the game resumed, the ball fell to him again in the box and he fired a rocket that the keeper couldn't contain for 5-0. This team were cooking. And it was at this point that we took a very bold move, and that is this. Audi Kukanda on loan to Legia Warszawa. Now, they actually put a £10 million transfer bid in for him, and I wasn't willing to sell him to them, least of all for that kind of money, because I felt that he does have a genuine future here. But with the players we've got around the club, it felt like too good of an opportunity to maybe try and turn it into a loan. So I said to them, hey, not 10 million, but you can have him for loan for this season if you pay his wages. And they said, what's the catch? I said nothing, and that's where he has now gone. Next up, it was newly promoted Vidjev Łódź, and to give them credit, they held us back nicely. That was until Naeem decided to do it all by himself, cutting in from the right and finishing on his left peg. I said he needed to add goals, so maybe this is the start. 5 minutes after, Duru provided a beautiful assist for Catalar to smash home and take our 2-goal lead into the interval. Not long after, the same combo linked up again as Duru slipped a lovely ball into the channel for Catalar to do what he does best. Duru with the hat-trick of assists and really flourishing on the other side of the strike force. 4 games into the season, 4 clean sheets for Docampo. Sane who? A statement I immediately regretted as Docampo wafted a leg at a cross to put it on a plate for Kalinski and give Lech the lead in our first big test of the season. Some wild defending then gave Toure the freedom of Kraków to bang home their second and leave us wondering how sleeping pills ended up in our protein shakes that morning. We finally found some stimulants 30 minutes from time as Duru fired into the roof of the net, but it wasn't enough to salvage a point. We needed a response and got the chance 20 minutes in against Motor as a push in the box gave Monparouche the chance to give us the lead. In the second half, Duru showed once again why he is excellent in his new role as he squared the ball from a great shooting position to set up a guaranteed goal for Katala. The strike force was clicking, which would be very much needed as we geared up to face Panathinaikos in a mentally crucial Champions League playoff. But half an hour into a slow game, Stapelfeld pulled off an unlikely dream ball for Duru to collect and fire home for the surprise lead, which lasted all of 4 minutes before Facundo Pellistri, yes, that one, finished brilliantly past Ocampo for the immediate response. The game had now come to life, and just another 3 minutes later, Duru stopped assisting and put his scoring boots on to whack a lovely strike through a crowd of bodies and restore the lead. With the game winding down, the tiredness was creeping in, and this was made very clear when Taborda was allowed to run through our half, in from the touchline and slide home a deserved equaliser. Still, a draw isn't a bad result. But a win is even better, as patient play in the box let Katala drop it back to Krzyżanowski, who made no mistake with his shot and gave us a massive lead for the second leg. With an eye on that second leg, a heavily rotated team made the trip to face Radomiak Radom, and 17 minutes in, debutant Ander Redondo found Steuer, who scored his first of the season. Nice to see the angry bastard back. Things remained like that until the hour when Kaminski found Foreman with more space than Nasser to put the game to bed. 5 minutes from time, a wholesome moment, Foreman turned provider and set through Redondo to finish for 3-0. He looked very comfortable in the team despite his inexperience. So that meant that after 6 games, we were top of the league, but still only by 1 point, and incredibly 1 point clear of Górnik Zabrze, newly promoted and still unbeaten with 4 wins to their name already. What a start! What's even weirder is that the only 2 unbeaten teams in the league were them and of course other newly promoted side Wisła Płock, who may have less points but still were doing a fantastic job with 10 points from their first 6 games as well. 16 goals and 2 conceded for us, but the plus 14 goal difference is exactly the kind of start that we needed. We felt that this was the kind of year where we just don't don't want to be 5th at Christmas. But with that said, it was now time for the second leg and the most important match of the season. This team absolutely loves a goal in the 5th minute, and today was no different. Montparnasse' perfect pass over the top allowed Català to take it round the keeper and give us breathing space for all of 7 minutes before Catrish received the ball from a nice free kick and tightened up the tie again. This lasted just 2 more minutes before Dusan, destroyer of nets, struck again with his best of the season so far, an absolute thunderbolt to make it 2-1. Still before half an hour, Dulu was fed over the top by Coffee and calmly finished for 3-1 and 6-3 respectively. Not satisfied with power, Obradovic wanted to prove that he had finesse as well. A well-worked corner finally paid off for us as he passed it into the bottom corner and passed us into the UCL League phase. Money, 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 and hopefully some coefficient points. Fresh from our success, we welcomed Brookbet to a rainy Krakow, and 6 minutes in, the mood dampened further, with Maswanganye being found open in the box to put us behind. It's always him. On the stroke of our time, a penalty from the Red Mumbler took us level, and like bookends to the interval, 2 minutes after the resumption of play, Obradovic scored an almost identical goal to that which put us behind. Love to see the resilience. A few days later, the mood had improved, and with it, the weather, as some beautiful link-up with Stoya and Català saw our informed Spaniard drill us in front after 13 minutes. In the second period, youngster Kaminski slapped one on a plate for Duru to stretch our lead. Unfortunately, a few moments later, the clean sheet was gone as Cantero headed home from an insane angle, but that was all she wrote. Another close game, another 3 points. We just kept on rolling. As we approached the transfer deadline day, the domestic games continued to fly at us like hailstones, but we remained sharp. Piakovsky again showed why he's got a bright future to deliver a nice pass for Stoya to slam through a crowd of bodies. 10 minutes from time, Stoya's deflected effort from the edge of the box found the net, and this season was beginning to feel very different, with our first Champions League phase game following soon after against Villarreal. But before that, there was a couple of signings on deadline day too, because you got to get involved, right? First up was Alessandro Peña, 125 grand from Alzira in Spain. With us losing Kazemka, and by losing I mean letting him free, the opportunity came along to sign someone like Alessandro Peña, especially with Mosquera complaining about wanting to leave, so we decided to do a little swappity swap and basically decided to sell Mosquera to an Ecuadorian side with the option to bring in Alessandro Peña for that kind of price, and he is just very, very good, isn't he? Look at the state of him. Lower League Spain is a goldmine in F126 in general. But he's not getting away with that mustache. I've just noticed that. It's nearly the same colour as his skin tone, but you don't get away with that mustache, I'm sorry. We also decided to get a bit of a sugar high and drop 3.4 million on Angelo Pisani from Sutiro over in Italy. You're thinking, yes, he's another number 10. I can't help myself. Hi, my name is Matt. I have a problem with signing number 10s, but he's also very good. He's gone back on loan for the rest of the season, so that's later Matt's problem. We then signed Botswan and Thabang Boy from Paris Saint-Germain, of all teams, for £50,000. He's not even a bad player, to be honest. Incredible name, though. There were obviously some really cheap freebie guys for the loan farm in there, but not that many. But it was now time for the big boy group of the Champions League. And 11 minutes in, some positioning from Krzyzanowski that can best be described as shit allowed Akamac a free run at goal, and we were behind early on. Where was he going? Less than a minute later, he gave the ball away again to give the perfect chance for a through ball, which Oluwase took with open arms. A truly disastrous start from us, showing that yet again, the Champions League is not to be trifled with. But finally, with 20 minutes to play, we showed some fight. After missing a series of chances, Català finally found the net to give us a lifeline. 5 minutes later, it got even better as Stapelfeld fed Montparnasse, who spun in the box to fire home an equaliser that was amazingly deserved despite our awful start. We felt we could even push on for the winner. Villarreal had other ideas though, as Akamac turned provider for Mikotadze to slip past a helpless Docampo to break our hearts after all. The effort. I think I would have rather just lost 2-0 at this point, given the heartbreak, but the stats and the performance show that we can actually compete at this level, and it gave me hope that we maybe just wouldn't get 2 points this time around. Maybe we'd get, 3, maybe win a game. Back in the league, our run of narrow victories needed a breaking point, which came at Korona Kielce. A lovely header from Kukta put them in front after 20 minutes. The rested team did find the energy for a leveller though, as Kaminski placed a cross straight on Català's forehead. It was hard for him to miss, but it did end the run with another Champions League game on the horizon against Atalanta. Away from home as well. I mean, it doesn't get easier for us. But buoyed from our performance last time in Europe, we arrived in Italy with hope in our hearts. Hope soon then became conviction, as a scramble in the box led to Montparnasse scoring yet again and showing why we'd signed him. The smiles lasted around 4 minutes before a deflected shot was swept home by Daniel Maldini. But this is not the Wisła of old. We would have crumbled. Instead, we doubled down. Just after the break, some neat passing set Dusan free, and his toe-poke shot found the bottom corner. As the Italians pushed forward, we found gaps, and with 15 minutes remaining, Kaminski put a perfect ball into the channel for Dusan to bury his second of the game and give us our first win in the Champions League phase of this save. Shout out to Kaminski as well. With injuries to both Naeem and to Coffee, we were relying on the young Polish wingback, and he was having a start to the season despite having no dribbling ability. He was just cooking. And some might have a hangover going into the next game as a result of that win, but not us. Instead, we had a coma, as Hattenball was given time in the box to feed Jaw, who we really should have seen coming when the music started. But we still have quality, and 10 minutes later, we woke up. John provided the cross for Jens Hjortedal, who gladly levelled the score. But our revival was only temporary, as lazy defending from Coffee let Shibora cut inside and bury the winner, and us with it. Still, from looking at these stats, how did we not at least score twice? But with the international break now been and gone, we needed a response. Picking up the ball on the edge of the box, he ran, and would you believe it, he ran before slotting into the bottom corner for the winner ahead of a crucial derby match next week. A derby that was somewhat of a distraction from our home clash with Barcelona midweek, and I assume the defenders were watching for the arrival of the Barca team plane as they failed to spot the ball looping over them and allowing Kameri to put our old enemy in front again. There is one man who lives for the derby, and that is Kasper Duda. Nigel rolled the ball back to him, and his perfect side-footed effort tied things up and at least prevented the defeat. Despite what you'd call a genuinely very good start, we were still only 1 point clear of second place Legia. The lack of European football for them this season had a huge impact because they were just way more well-rested than we were most of the time. And 8 goals conceded in 13 games really was showing that Docampo was the right man for the job all along. Since their excellent starts, the newly promoted sides had began to fall away. Górnik Zabrze down with 4 defeats in their last 7 games, down into 9th place. Wisła Płock had lost 5 in that period as well. They were still clear of the relegation zone, but things were looking a bit more difficult for them. And it was weird, the 3 teams behind us in the league, in Legia, Lechia and Lech, looked a little bit more like regular Poland behaviour, which means it was unlikely to last. Shout out to Radomiak Radom as well. 5th place in the league, genuinely look like a really solid team. They don't concede a lot, they don't score a lot, they're boring to watch, but they get results. And we would have to do exactly that too, as Barcelona beckoned midweek. We'd started to look a bit more introspectively at our team, and I told you we'd come back to talk about Olufemi John and certain player traits. Now, he hadn't actually been great to start the season, despite playing quite a lot, because we thought he was ultimately going to overtake Krzyżanowski. But upon Krzyżanowski coming back in, the ratings and the assists just were better, basically, and we couldn't quite figure out why. That was until we noticed that Krzyżanowski has the trait gets forward wherever possible. Our man here, John, does not have that trait. He's getting it, and we're hoping that once he does, that should hopefully give him that final piece of the puzzle to make him into an elite player in that position. We hope. In other good news, Dusan Obradovic won the European Golden Boy Award. That's how good his calendar year has been. What a player. But that's enough of that, because we had to host Barca, and what could potentially be a humbling. 8 minutes in, Obradovic fed Duru, who sent the defenders to the Shadow Realm before calmly giving us the biggest lead of the save. A lead which lasted until 40 minutes of play when Barca remembered they had Lamine Yamal and cancelled out our advantage. But that was how it stayed. A brilliant performance, and genuinely, I'd say a deserved point in this game. We seem to have unlocked a new level of this team when everybody is fresh and firing. Huge result, and that meant now 4 points on the board. We'd already beaten our tally from before. Things were looking good. Unfortunately, none of that goal scoring carried over into the weekend when a dull 0-0 draw was played out. What, you thought I wasn't going to use that line? Come on now. We then had the cup against a team so good they named them twice, but we were better and the rotated side progressed. Back in the league ahead of a tough test at Porto, we welcomed Lechia, and after 15 minutes, Kwaku Ajeti scuffed a shot into the ground, but it found the net anyway for his first for the club. In the second half, Nigel Lunga added another with a superb dink over the keeper on the run. With 10 to play, a somewhat forgotten man, Alexander Furman, made it 3-0 from close range with Nigel providing again. It's just nice to see Nigel back in the team. Sadly, in stoppage time, the clean sheet was erased as Maseko curled a beauty home for a meaningless consolation. But our attention was really on Porto, and after a brilliant performance, Catalar found Naeem at the back post for a header to give us the lead and ultimately the win. Our second 1-0 win in as many years in Portugal. Naeem is looking unstoppable at the moment and looks like the most elite player in the squad, especially when we're in Europe. He seems to have big game mentality. Back in the league against Górnik Zabrze, the boys showed their class again. Naeem continued to terrorise opponents as he put it on a plate for Montparnasse to gobble up. Next, more telepathic link-up from the front line led to Catalar putting Duru through for 2-0 before half-time. But with just a few minutes left, he got his chance as Duda squared the ball past an overly eager goalkeeper to allow him the easiest of finishes. Catalar, when you watch him in the match engine, I don't really know how to explain this, he looks like the most arrogant footballer you've ever seen. He's like Zlatan, and I love that. You'll see why in a bit. His assisting took itself up a notch even more next as we welcomed Wisła Płock. 26 minutes in, Duru found Montparnasse for a tidy finish and a nice lead. 10 minutes later, that combination of ball into channel, drilled low cross, goal, worked again as Duru got another one for the year. In the second half, it got even better as Montparnasse' brilliant pass allowed Català to be selfless and set up Duru for 3-0. Then the Red Bumbler himself was able to waltz in from a corner and make it 4. Our opponents notched one back, but it didn't stop the onslaught, and this time Peña was put through with a tidy play to add our 5th. Finally, Català got his goal to go with his 3 assists and cap off a stunning win ahead of more Champions League action midweek. 6-1! Brilliant work, lads! Besiktas midweek would not be easy though, but for us it felt like another league game as Stapelfeld's low shot was tipped home ice hockey style by Duru to give us the advantage. 10 minutes later, Montparnasse's X-ray vision let him play the through ball of the week to Duru, who calmly made it 2-0. Obradovic had gone quiet recently, but just a few minutes into the second half, Català woke him up by giving him no choice but to score. 3-0, and then things got better for us, but not on the pitch. Montparnasse signed a new contract. It is a huge contract by our standards. He wasn't our highest paid player before. He certainly is now. We've got guys creeping up into the high teens as far as value goes in their contracts. Montparnasse, £32,000 a week. It was basically the most we could offer him. It's got enormous appearance fees, goal bonuses, everything. But crucially, it gets rid of his release clause. He is now locked here for the foreseeable future. We could still lose him if a bid comes in and the board decide to sell, but frankly, he's the kind of guy I could see building a team around in the future. With him, and if we can keep hold of Català, these kind of guys, I reckon we could win a Champions League with Montparnasse leading in the line in that number 10 role. Genuinely, he's that good, provided he continues to develop like this. I also love that his marking is going up loads, even though we're not even training him for stuff like that. He's doing extracurricular activities to learn defending. We had a chance to test his new contract against bottom side Arca, and they were no match. First, creative Català set up Nigel inside the first minute for the earliest of leads. 20 minutes later, Nigel's shot cannoned off the bar, to which Català picked up the ball and said, "Go on, lad, have another go," which he did, and made it 2-0. Català finally got the chance to score before half-time as Krzyżanowski scooped one over the top, which he buried from an absurd angle. You can really see why Spurs wanted him now. With 10 to play, Montparnasse celebrated his new deal by making it 4-0 with a comfy finish. The cup saw us face high-flying Radomiak Radom, but we shot them down easily, first with Duru, then with Dusan from the spot, and finally Peña for more easy progression. Our last league game before Christmas would see us host Rakov, but we had Rangers not that long after that in a must-win game that could potentially guarantee us progression to the next round of the Champions League. But first, a little matter of domestic stuff. Our attention elsewhere very much showed, as we allowed Adriano to turn and run straight in to give the visitors the lead. Moments later, Mr. Reliable Casper Duda got us level again, because it's just what he does, but a penalty put them back in front and we had to rely on unlikely hero Kwaku Ajeti to slot home the equaliser with 20 to play. This could have easily been a defeat, but we didn't care because if we beat Rangers, not only would we probably qualify for the next round, but this would give us a great shot at top 16, and you know what that means, especially as we had Spurs and Man United after Christmas. Not a lot of points there, I suspect. So naturally, after 18 minutes, Luis Eduardo became a side character in his own life as he permitted Gassama to turn and run straight past him before putting us behind. But we kept pressing and missing chance after chance after chance until we gave away a penalty with 20 to play, which Miovski dispatched to leave us kicking ourselves for missing these moments. Under a minute later, Naim and Obradovic combined to get us back in it, but we simply couldn't score again. The stats of this game make for bleak reading, honestly. This was one of those ones that we absolutely should have been winning, and we'll probably rue this mistake. As far as the league is concerned going into the Christmas break, 19 games played, so just over the halfway mark, still only 4 points clear, but plus 32 goal difference now, still only 12 goals conceded, 44 scored. We definitely look like a team that has more goals in them this season. Last year we got a few more goals than the teams below us, but it was sort of 5 or 6 more. This year it feels like we're on course for a lot more, sort of 70, maybe even 80 goals, and the defence has just been exceptional. But anything can happen in Poland. We're still only 4 points clear of Legia, still only 5 points clear of Lechia, and Lech are not out of this either, and neither are Radomiak Radom, who will not go away. Cracovia have definitely not been the same this season, especially after they lost Saba to Newcastle for £5 million. They don't look quite the team they were last year. It was actually a very quiet winter window for us initially, of course, because our window doesn't open until like the 28th of January, but we did still have one out, and that was Jonathan Mosquera. But £4.5 million he left to join Liga de Quito, which I actually thought sounded like a league rather than a team, but there you go. And before we'd even get a chance to play any league games again, we'd have to play 2 more Champions League matches. The lads were fresh, of course, from the winter break, but they'd all been skiing and doing other business, so they were going to be a little bit rickety, I would suspect. A top 16 spot in the Champions League was still on the table, but in order to get it, we'd have to get points off United and Spurs. Not easy. It was made even harder 12 minutes in when Kulishevsky danced through and put it on a silver platter for Xavi Simons for the go-ahead goal. I then became Matstradamus.
Equaliser here, and suddenly it's back on. Naim. Space. Okay, that is a decision. It's fine. 1000 IQ. It's going to be headed in now. Oh my...
That was actually Dusan Obradovic's 7th goal in 9 Champions League matches. He comes alive on the big stage. Unfortunately, just after the hour mark, a fabulous cross from Destiny Udogi was powered home by Brennan Johnson. Krzyżanowski was also given an awful second yellow card for a clean tackle, and after that, absolute curtains. Most of Spurs' XG actually came after that when we were down to 10 men and we'd already made all our subs. It was bad times, basically. We were cooked. But it's okay, because we have Man United next. Nice and easy. They were just, one of the best teams in the entire competition. 30 minutes in, it was anything but easy, as Bruno Fernandes, still leading the charge at 35, bundled home the opening goal, and we feared for our goal difference with there still being an outside shot of us losing top 24. But the tide changed on the hour as John slipped a delightful ball into the channel for Ander Redondo to sweep home instinctively to tie the game. He's done an incredible job of filling in for Katala since the winter break. Unfortunately, Katala's picked up an injury, which is going to see him miss quite a while. And in the end, a 1-1 draw at home against Man United. We've also got a draw against Barca, which shows we can compete, at least at home, against the big sides. In the end, we finished 17th. Not bad at all. 11 points on the board, 14 scored, 13 conceded. A very respectable season when you consider that we got 2 points the last time we were here, 2 years ago? So a definite progression in the right direction, but it does make you think what we could have done had we got a few extra points, or just beaten Rangers. That would have done it for us, basically. We'd have had 14 points, it would have put us into the top 16. But that is how it goes. Particularly as Rangers didn't even qualify. Neither did Celtic, by the way. Both of them, in fact, got knocked out in the group stage here, along with Juve. But the problem with being 17th through 24th is that you have to play one of the top 16 teams, and we got Inter. We've clearly shown that we can play against some of the best in Europe, but at this knockout stage, it feels like the experience that they have, the consistency, and just the quality shows more, and we were going to need a miracle. The anger that we had from missing out on top 16, we then took out on Widzew Łódź, recording our biggest league win of the entire save and the first time notching 7 since our first season in the top flight. I can't show all the goals here, but some of the bangers from this game, Obradovic once again went full psycho mode with 2 goals and 3 assists. At half time in this game, we'd already had 24 shots and a staggering 84% possession, which I think on its day shows that this setup could pulverize someone. Seriously. I feel like 10 goals is definitely possible one day. Sadly, that energy didn't extend to Saturday night against Lech Poznan, as first another round of circus defending handed them the lead through Wolomark, as always. Then they had their own turn in the big top as their keeper didn't get in the same postcode as across, allowing for the easy header for Peña to bring our massively rotated team level. On the stroke of half time, we collapsed again to let Wolomark slot them back in front. A Saul Aranda penalty bailed us out a point. He's another bright spark that's sort of been pushed into first team contention due to a couple of injuries, meaning that other guys have moved up. He's then become one of the rotation guys at the moment, and actually, again, much like Redondo, looks pretty confident in this team. Another Spaniard too. The pipeline continues, whatever Spanish for pipeline is. But at least we got a point and could rest the entire team ready for our home game against Inter in the knockouts. But after a genuinely great but tight performance for the first hour of the game, Montparnasse had a pot shot that seemed to hit every leg on the way through before rolling past a confused Santos to give us a precious lead just on the hour. But our precious was soon ripped away from us by the Gollum-esque Inter as Carlos Augusto was given the freedom of the box to even things up. But I then turned to the one man I knew I could trust. After I'd exhausted all the other men I could trust. After some incredible work from Naeem on the right, a low cross was turned in by Alexander Furman, and the man still earning £100 a week had netted the winner in a Champions League game. All we had to do now was not lose in Italy, which is a lot more difficult than I made it sound. We had the needless distraction of the league in between, but the rotation squad this time played like first teamers. Despite Peña handing them an equaliser, we were amazing, with Saul Aranda scoring 2 more and really taking his chance in the team with open arms. Pick of the bunch was definitely from Hassan Ranjbar and his totally unneeded pirouette before netting our 4th goal. Good win, momentum kept, fresh for the second leg, check, check, check. Now, a date with destiny, which is apparently in Milan. Unfortunately, after 48 minutes of hard graft, the set pieces got us again as Bastoni's powerful header tied the tie. But we held on to take the tie to extra time, despite offering very little, with the hope that we could hold on and get to penalties. Or just bribe the ref.
Craig Pawson, if you're watching, you fancy a little sausage, then...
That was until this happened.
He's just going to let... Now, the problem is now the space in the middle. Oh, well done, Abdullahi. Now he's going to do something stupid, isn't it? Yeah.
We were devastated. Understandably so, but ultimately I think it was probably a fair result on the night. There's not really much we could have done. The legs weren't there. We just aren't quite at that level to go toe-to-toe with a team like Inter over 2 games. If we'd had maybe a bigger lead, but it's just so tough at that point, and we just don't quite have that depth that they do to bring off the bench in those extra time things, and yeah, that's definitely something we'll learn on for next year. But even reaching the knockouts of the Champions League for us is a huge step. To be done this in season 5, man. We hosted a still surging Radomiak who looked destined for Europe next year. Duru popped us ahead from a nice pass, and the pressure had paid off early. That was until Benito set up Angulo, whose lovely turn made space for his shot for 1-1. On the hour, they executed the move again. This time Luna slipped it to Benito, whose spin sent 3 defenders for a pint of milk, and he put them ahead massively against the run of play. More silliness gave away a penalty, which Luna accepted for 3-1. Duru managed a late goal for us, but it wasn't enough. A terrible defeat in a game we dominated, and now the lead was back to 2 points again. Come on, man. The cup meant the return of Katala, back in the lineup for the first time since December, thanks to his injury. He wasted no time in showing why he's again being linked with big moves, an insane outside of the foot volley to put us in front, like he was playing in the park. There is an arrogance about his playstyle that is absolute cinema at times. 2 minutes from the end, he did it again, this time wafting a powerful leg to side foot into the bottom corner like he had a disdain for the competition itself. That's my guy. Through to the semis with Katala Ibrahimovic in tow. Anything we can do with a football, he can do with an orange. It was a mostly quiet deadline day, but we did spend £1.1 million on Walter Jarl from Hammarby in Sweden. He's actually gone on loan to the second tier to our affiliate side, Pushta Mitsa, and we were a little disappointed by the potential more than anything else, but his attributes are fantastic. We also dropped £2.2 million on Marko Bakic from Serbia, actually cost more than Obradovic, which is incredible because when you look at the difference. But still, he's a decent player, and I thought, you know, maybe he could be another kind of guy that could play that DM/centre-back role. And lastly, Hans Geisler. It's another number 10, I realise, but, you know, Unterhaching had him, 475 grand. There's so many out there, it's insane. You can't not sign them, surely. If we can get him into the loan farm, he'll be great. That's for next season, though.
Squad role is crucial here. Breakthrough prospect. Come on, Hans. Don't do that. You'll have to wash them. That's a terrible... I'm so sorry.
Back to the league, and back to nice goals. Dusan fed Duru, who gave us the lead inside 10 minutes. But we left ourselves way too open for Maspanganyu, who normally scores against us, this time provided for Al Dahan, and 1-1 was all we could achieve. Sucks, but it happens. Having just beaten Jagiellonia in the cup, it was only fair to do the same in the league. First, Stoyer swept home another Catalar assist. Then Obradovic decided he hadn't tried to rip the net off the goal frame lately, so had a try from a nice Naeem pass. Catalar then had his own moment after Stoyer fed him through on the hour. They got one back, but we still took the points. And after seeing us win all these games, for the most part domestically, you could be forgiven for thinking we are surely extending that gap in the lead now. Nope, not even a little bit. 54 points after 25 games is decent. It's over 2 points a game, it's what you want to be aiming for, but still only 2 points clear of Lechia. But crazily, Legia Warszawa were on for nearly, 68 points if they carried on this pace, Lechia closer to 70. We really were going to have to probably get our highest points tally since our promotion in order to win the league this year. Gornik's stabilisation looks like they'll be fine to stay up, but it really is just a battle down at the bottom. A battle which saw Widzew Łódź sack their manager and appoint, I can't believe I get to say this because this is wild, Marta. Now, if you don't know who Marta is, she is, I think she's the most capped female footballer of all time and one of the greatest female footballers of all time. Brazilian, of course. We brought her in as a coach because she was available and just thought it'd be cool to pack out our backroom staff with interesting names and legends of the game. And then they said, hey, wouldn't you like to be our manager? So she, from this point on, was in charge of Widzew Łódź. Keep an eye on that one. We've got a few more of those guys and girls in the backroom staff too, like Alex Greenwood and Iron Robin and Frank Ribery. So we'll see if those guys get jobs too. So with 9 games to go, still all to play for, as I'd accidentally promised chat that if we didn't win the league at some point in this save from this point on, I'd sing Wonderwall. Something I very much did not regret was agreeing to sign Simon Bank from Odense over in Denmark for, albeit 5.4 million, sight unseen. But we could see his jumping reach, and he has quite good tent poles. And then I sort of thought about his name a little bit more.
The bank and his name's Seaman Bank. Oh my god, his name's Seaman Bank. Chat, he's a sperm bank.
I also can't wait for the news article that says something like, Manchester United show interest in Bank. A pairing of him and Nathaniel West at the back, sorted. Could play for Halifax. So we set about defending that slender title lead away at Ruk Horzów and took just 8 minutes to break through with Peña finishing off after a scramble in the box. On the hour, those pesky corners got us again and the defender on the line seemed to flinch away from the ball. Embarrassing. But we dug deep and Stoyer off the bench added some energy to the front line, jinking into the box and setting up Catalar for the winner 20 minutes from time. Now, this game and all the ones played after this were all played after the latest update, so we were worried that our tactic might break a little bit. And things have definitely shifted, particularly with regards to our central midfield, I would say. Obradovic's role definitely is going to need some work, because it seems like now, with the latest patch and the match engine, the channel midfielder gets too far forward a lot of the time in plays, and as a result, he's almost anonymous because he can't get on the ball anymore, which is really annoying, considering he's a central mid. There was a youth intake. It was half a star. We've had some luck lately. It's not even worth showing because nobody is going to get near this team. Genuinely, the worst youth intake I've had in years. Next up, the train kept rolling against notorious banana skin Korona-Kielce, and it took until the 69th minute for this nice piece of play from Damasiewicz, who took the ball from his own half, drove all the way towards the back line, and then saw his deflected shot find the net for 1-0. What a run from the young man! But creator of the first goal, Alexander Furman, decided not to be outshone and struck a shot that was somehow even better than his title-winning wonder goal 3 years ago. Surely goal of the season. What a hit! Next, it was Łukasz Łódź in the sun, and Marta's one of her first games in charge. And after the half an hour mark, Duru dropped it back for a beauty from Naeem, who definitely succeeded in adding goals to his game, before an absolute mess in the box handed them an equaliser. 4 minutes later, we scored the winner through Stoya, but the game just doesn't think the goal exists. It does. We saw it, but the highlights only show 2 goals and it says that it's 1-1. In fact, a lot of the scores are wrong in the highlights, which is really fun to do. FM aside, it was time for a Wednesday Night Cup semi-final, and it was banana skin time again. I feel like I see Korona-Kielce more than I see Pog at this point. Early in the second half, some neat work in the box culminated with a brilliant flick from Duru straight into Català's path for the lead. It didn't last long though, as Asaidi again had too much space and was able to find the bottom corner. Català's second, this time from the spot, gave us hope again, only to see it dashed by a curling effort from Martin 8 minutes from time. Extra time would yield no goals, penalties it was. It was De Campo's turn to be the hero, saving 3 straight penalties, allowing Stoya to be the man to actually score the winning penalty for us. But De Campo, what a legend! Having a guy that can save penalties is very useful, especially when it comes to, well, any game of football. And incredibly, the cup final would see us face Cracovia again. We hope the late show midweek wouldn't affect our crucial league game against GKS at the weekend, and while pandas might be an endangered species, their goal creation is much more abundant, as he put it on a plate for Kuam after 56 minutes. 4 minutes later, it got even worse as the defence opened like the gates of a medieval castle to allow Planganguma all the time in the world to make it 2-0 and leave us just 2 points clear once again, just in time for a derby in the league. It was the perfect start. Montparouche drove into the box, he was fouled, converted the spot kick to give us the lead after 10 minutes. After 41, we made the same error and it was level at the break. Some personnel changes after 60 minutes almost immediately came good, and Furman, who's looked like a new man since the match engine update, pulled it back for a wonderful Stoya strike to restore the lead. He provided again with 3 minutes remaining, lulling 2 defenders in before picking out Duru to kill the game. Still only 2 points clear, remarkably, but at least Legia was slightly further back than they were before, less of a threat these days. However, in our final 4 games, we had to play both of them. First up was Legia, and after half an hour and some nice link-up play, Montparouche found the decisive through ball, which Duru was able to slot home despite missing almost everything as of late. With 50 minutes left as Legia pushed, Big Jens saw his shot ricochet up and into a very happy Stoya's face to nestle in the net for 2-0 and surely put us out of reach. Naeem then decided we weren't even done, ruined the left back before serving Duru with a chance that even he couldn't hit the post with. But Legia won again, because of course they did, and we'd be playing them next away from home. The only difference is they had a nice rest, we had a cup final to play in between. Squeaky bum time, friends. And that cup final couldn't have had a worse start. Kameri was flicked through and was able to dink the ball over the sprawling De Campo to give our rivals the lead, which they would take into half time. But we would not let this stand. With 53 on the clock, Jens found Montparouche, who added yet another to his insane tally for the season and levelled it up. But what happened next will live long in the memory. After a well-worked short free kick, Català found himself in space on the edge of the box. He took a touch to control before looping a world-class effort into the far post to score one of the best goals of his career. And that was how the scoreline stayed, until 5 minutes from time when Montparouche fired Duru over the top to make it 3-1 and hand us the trophy. But he wasn't done. 4 minutes later, he then made a diagonal run which was found and smashed in a 4th. 3 minutes later, insanely, he did it again to complete a 7-minute hat-trick in a cup final. They got one back, but who cares? The cup was ours. It was now time for one of the crunchiest games of the entire save. Legia away. With a 2-point gap, if they beat us, it was suddenly out of our hands with 2 matches to go. And, well, given this John Carver side love a good run, we felt that if we lost this, it would probably be curtains. A draw would keep us in the driving seat, but we left us almost no room for wiggles. Slight caveat, though, is we'd had injuries, midweek in fact, after the cup final. De Campo broke his jaw and would be out for the rest of the season. So we'd go to backup goalkeeper Loria, except he was going to miss the game through a very short-term injury that just so happened to span that game. I'm not sure he's actually injured, which meant we'd have to rely on a player that had never played senior football for us before, Frenchman Alexis Segura, who I'm not even sure I showed you a few years ago when we signed him. He's 19 now, has never really found a loan or anything, he's just been in the B team. He got his call up and would have to start for the rest of the season. Oh yeah, we were also missing losing Duru for the rest of the season, so nice and easy. And 5 minutes in, when Montparnasse converted from the spot to let us breathe a bit, it did actually feel a little bit easy. 6 minutes later, Furman's channel running again paid off as he found Naeem, who set it back for Dushan to score his first in what felt like ages to put us in a truly commanding position. That wasn't until 34 minutes when a corner effort was well saved by Segura, but nobody reacted to the rebound and they were back in the game. 7 minutes later, Zage's cross was deflected and landed at the feet of Maseko, on loan from us by the way, to make our lead evaporate and me start to hear the sounds of Wonderwall growing in the background. And then this happened.
I'm just going to preemptively put this on attacking for when they inevitably score this penalty and go ahead against us now. Penalty to Lechia Gdansk. We were 2-0 up in this game. Losing Duru and our goalkeeper for this match has... I mean, Segura's done okay, but it's Kotovos up against Segura. Saved by Segura! The young Frenchman saves a penalty on his debut for the club.
Insanely, the youngster had saved the penalty and might have genuinely won us the title with that, or at least given us the opportunity to. What a clutch moment from such a young player. We still wouldn't wrap it up in the next game though, unless they dropped points. We set to work quickly, and 6 minutes in, a JT found Montparnasse, so he slotted home his first goal and continued his great run of late. 11 minutes later, he was there again as the ball found its way into his path. He smashed it home, and at the very least let us do our part. But Lechia were also ahead at Radomiak Radom, so it wouldn't even matter that much. Ambrosch's audacious free kick caught us out to make it 2-1 and had us running scared. It was then Marathon Man Furman's chance to shine again, driving for miles with the ball, rolling it to a JT to restore the lead. Obradovic's header made it 4 before Furman got his reward after some great work from Krzyżanowski to make it 5-1. But what of Legia?
Losing against an already relegated Wisła Płock would suck. It would also depend on who they're playing on the last day as well. You know it might not, because Radomiak have equalised. If that game remains 1-1 and we win, which we are obviously going to, it's 2-1 to Radomiak. The randomers have handed us the title, surely, with a game to spare. We've done it. With 1 game to spare, just like last year. But my God, did we not make that easy for ourselves yet again? It also goes to show that Segura save has been huge. Because you remember, there would have been a 3-point swing had he not saved that penalty. It would have been in real trouble. Come on. Huge.
That, of course, much like last year, wrapped up the title with 1 game to spare. A 5-point lead this time ahead of Lechia. I mean, we've definitely been the best side this season, and they've overperformed to stay with us. But it's still very impressive how year after year, this just seems to keep happening in Poland. Like, realistically, Legia could finish on 68 points this season and come 3rd. It's truly insane, and we really have had to be at our very, very best. Sadly going down, Wisła Płock, which have Wodge under Marta, but I assume they'll keep her since it's not like she did anything wrong there. And Arca, who had a late surge, but still couldn't really, well, get over the fact that they conceded 69 times. And we scored 83 so far in the league. Very, very nice indeed. As it happens, our last game I think is actually against Wisła Płock anyway, so it probably would have been a fairly easy title race. And you're probably wondering why I've not talked about the last game of the season yet. And the answer will become clear in a moment, but first let's just take a little look at the second tier. Pogoń, along with Maciej Kuziemka, had already got themselves promoted as champions back to the top flight with a game to spare, and a hell of a season as well. Piast Gliwice coming up with them. As for the playoffs, we simply don't even know yet. In fact, our affiliate side, Puszczenie Płomice, who... that is some performance. Are 1 point away. Could they maybe sneak in? They have a lot of loanees from us, like a lot. But it's made even better by the fact that Kuziemka has had the season of a lifetime for them. He's their best player by a comfortable margin, 7.44 average rating. He's now wanted as well by top flight sides, including Radomiak Radom, who we're going to be playing in Europe. Imagine if he ends up signing for them after 1 season in the second tier as a newly promoted club and ends up straight back into European contention. I would love that for him. But that is enough about that. Now it's time to talk about Europe, because you're still thinking, right, what's not happened in one of these saves before that could possibly be this big of a deal? So the 2 teams that we'd have in the Conference League this season would be Lechia and Korona Kielce. Lechia got a reasonable run at things. They beat Aikor, they then beat Maccabi Haifa, and then beat Olimpia Ljubljana on penalties, albeit to reach the group stage of the Conference League. Korona were actually in the Europa League initially, beat Hibs quite comfortably, but then lost to Elfsborg in the next round before finding themselves in the playoffs of the Conference League, where they beat Czeka Risaspor to reach themselves into the group stage as well. Trying out a new way of showing you their fixtures without spoiling stuff. Unfortunately, that's where the good news ends for them, as neither of them got out of the league phase. Once again, the form thingy doesn't really show everything properly. It might show for these guys, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, so you can see some of their fixtures in there. They beat West Ham, incredibly, but then lost to Karpaty, drew with Dilagori and Žalgiris Vilnius. It's not great. How do they beat West Ham and then balls it up that badly? Even worse was Korona Kielce, same number of points, got a win against Ilves, drew with Siska Sofia, but they did have some tough games against Dutch and Swiss sides, but disappointing because Conference League is usually where we make our bread and butter in terms of coefficient points, right? And with us doing well in Europe, we thought this was the year. So I guess it's time to talk about the Europa League, where much more difficult competition, but we do at least have better teams in it. And I say better teams, neither of them are even going to be in Europe next year. Jagiellonia and Cracovia. So actually, we had Cracovia who started in the Champions League qualifiers, but you know that they didn't stay there because you'd have seen them by now. But they did at least get past Olympiacos in the second qualifying round before facing Rangers in the third one, losing on penalties in the end despite winning at Ibrox. Good result, but it is what it is, straight into the group stage of the Europa. And our straight up Europa League team was, of course, Jagiellonia Białystok, who lost to Slavia Prague away, but managed to win on penalties in the second leg after a good result. They then lost away in Estonia to Levadia Tallinn before managing to beat them on penalties and, of course, scraping by the skin of their teeth into the group stages of the Europa League. Or in case you're wondering about the Conference League, the final, Como versus Basel. That's just kind of neat. But the league phase was a very different story indeed. Jagiellonia come 11th in the league phase. I don't even know what to say. That is insane behaviour. 4 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. Unbelievable. Top half, they get preferential treatment in the next round as well. For a much more difficult competition that they scraped into, they sure stepped their game up once they got into the league phase. And honestly, Cracovia, similar story. They're also top 16. Slightly worse off, but not by much. They were literally 1 point worse off as well, with 4 wins, 1 draw and 3 defeats. Neutral goal difference this time, but still, to see both of them qualify for the knockouts is truly astonishing. Cracovia would have to face 21st place Roma in the playoff, and Jagiellonia would find themselves against 17th place Genk. Not easy. Unless you're these two, apparently, as somehow Cracovia beat Roma 2-1 on aggregate to knock them out and get to the round of 16. Jagiellonia then, of course, beat Genk. They were both through to the round of 16. Huge points for Poland. Cracovia would then face French side Stade Rennais in the next round, not easy at all, and Jagiellonia would be faced off against Rapid Wien. Again, gets tougher. Unless you're them. Once again, Cracovia 2-1 victors against Stade Rennais through to the quarterfinals, and Jagiellonia with, again, a 2-1 victory in one of their games too against Rapid Wien, both of them through to the quarters, and they would not face each other either. But it would get very tough now. Cracovia would face off against Benfica. Jagiellonia would have Hoffenheim. They went and beat them. Jagiellonia 5, Hoffenheim 3. They'd beaten Hoffenheim. This is a team that barely beat an Estonian side to get into the group, and now they'd beaten Hoffenheim. Sadly, Cracovia did lose, albeit narrowly, to Benfica at the quarterfinal stage, but still massive coefficient points for Poland. And with the fact that Newcastle had dropped out, Athletic Club would be Jagiellonia's opponent in the semi-finals of the Europa League. Season 5, remember? Yeah, I don't even know what to say. Jagiellonia 2, Athletic Club 1. They beat Athletic Club in the semi-finals of the Europa League and will be in the Europa League final in the 5th season of a save like this. I've never been to a final this early myself, let alone had another team in the nation that I'm playing in a Building a Nation, reach a final before me, let alone it be the Europa League and not even the Conference League. They have gone on the most miracle-esque run I think I've ever seen in any of my Building a Nation saves. And because Club Brugge beat Benfica in the semis, you'd feel like of the two, Benfica are probably the slightly better side, but clearly not. They genuinely have a chance. And this is why we've not played the last league game yet, because the Europa League final, as you can see, is tomorrow in game. And will you believe this? Obviously, we're going to be watching that game over on stream, and that is what is happening right now. We're all on the Jagiellonia hype train, basically. We'll obviously play the final league game, which is irrelevant, ultimately. I'll obviously catch you up on that next time around after that, and then jump into some transfers. But this is astonishingly good for us, and if they win the Europa League, they'll be in the Champions League next year. I think guaranteed group stage too. The money they'd get. So although this hasn't actually even finished yet, we can still have a look at the coefficients. We have 17.7 points this season, mostly thanks to them, and a little bit of us as well. If we just had teams in the Conference League actually do what they normally do, we could have been getting pretty close to 20 points this year, which is a dumbass season, and it really has moved us up a lot. We're the 5th best team on the year right now, and it could get better, because crucially, it also moves us, provisionally at least, into 9th place for the coming seasons. I don't think it takes away straight away, we have 1 more year, but that is huge because it gives us guaranteed Champions League group stage spot, and all the other teams sort of move up around as well, which is really useful. You get less chance for coefficient points, but also less chance to get knocked out early, which, as you saw with the Levadia Tallinn thing, is a possibility. Just looking at the ratings, we've obviously 1 more game to go, but it's a meaningless final of the season game, so I don't think it's going to change this a great deal. Naeem, star of the show yet again. 7.55 average rating, 3 goals, much more like it from him. 11 assists. He's always there. He's always going to get you that rough amount. 9.7 dribbles per game. He's kind of reached the level where I just think that he could fit into most teams now, and he's that good. Genuinely. Hjörtedal as well. Underrated this season. May have only got 3 goals and 6 assists. Perhaps even underperformed in some areas with those things. But his stability in the team meant that if he was available, he was starting. That being said, I said to keep an eye on Hassan Ranjbar this year, and this is the reason. Despite him only playing, well, he played 1,000 minutes. averaged a 7.13, and that was often in weaker teams too, which meant that he had to really step up. But whenever he was in a team with good players or whatever, he just always put good ratings down. Ignoring Segura's numbers here, this is because of B team games, it does count them, but I had to put him in here because obviously he's an absolute ledge. Same with Loria as well, who has played a few games for the first team. Top goal scorer though, Katala, 21. I said he'd get 35. I was wrong. He kind of stopped after an insane start where he was well on pace for it and started getting assists instead. 33 goal contributions in 39 games though is insane. But Montparnasse, 18 goals this season from number 10, albeit a few penalties in there too, but 8 assists. I mean, 26 goal contributions. You can't really argue for more than that. I wish he'd maybe got to double digits in both, but ultimately he is an absolute god on the pitch. Obradovic too, 17 goals, 10 assists. He faded a bit towards the end, we suspect because of the slight match engine changes, but either way, brilliant. Stoya, who was mostly a substitute, still managed to grab 8 goals for himself as well. That's how impactful he has been this year. Furman's got 6 goals and 5 assists, most of which came towards the end of the season as well, which is crazy. Pena only played half a year, got 5 goals. Nigel still chipped in with 5 on top of that too. Redondo hasn't played a great deal. Well, actually, no, he's played a decent amount, but he's got 4 goals. I do like him. Got some assists as well. On the assist side of things, obviously those guys are dominating that. Krzyzanowski's got himself 7 this season. It's not huge numbers. John's actually got 5 in the end, so he has started to come on a little bit towards the end of the year, and I think next year he may have his breakout season. As for the loan farm, we have 179 players in it, a lot of which are at Puszczenie Płomice, because it turns out that the moving players to your affiliate clubs is just easier this year. Not only that, when you do it one time and a lot of them say no, you just do it again, and a lot of those players will say yes because the guys that did go have now made the team better. So we decided to try to basically artificially inflate Puszczenie Płomice, and it nearly worked. They went from a team being like relegation candidates to nearly getting into the playoffs, and they may still do so. We just don't know yet. But in terms of best average performers for players that are sort of not at the random lower league sides at least, we've got Taylor Berko. Also, I love the load screen in this skin, by the way. It's so much better. Pisani's done well out on loan. Wolfgang Kunz's been out on loan for the second half of the year at Wisła Kraków as well. There's generally a better quality of player now out on loan at some of the bigger sides. So Fabrice Facone is out there, Jose Antonio is out. There's just way more people at way bigger sides, and it's really, really nice to see. Now, financially, we have 50 million quid in the bank. We are absolutely fine. We still have 190,000 in wage budget available, 19 million in transfer budget, because I never find players worth spending huge money on most of the time. And when I do, it's these £4-5 million signings who, like Montparnasse, for the most part, we don't know our budgets for next season yet because technically it hasn't finished. So we'll find out that later today as well. I appreciate that this is a bit of a weird situation. I've never had this happen before, to my knowledge, or at least not in a situation where I could just potentially say it up front, but I couldn't put that spoiler right up front because it would kind of spoil too much of the video to tell you about the Jagiellonia thing, but hopefully it's going well for them over on stream. We're probably full matching it, by the way. The aims for next season are really, really simple. Back in the Champions League again. Probably the last year we'll have to go through a playoff in order to do so, so still a chance of something crazy going wrong there. Hopefully the teams we got in Europe with us this season, you know, Legia, Lechia, Lech Poznan, Radomiak are a massive wild card. They should be able to be strong enough and have the rep to bring in guys that will help them with that. I pray that Jagiellonia win the Conference League, the Europa League, because that is a massive step forward, and it would get them into Europe next year as well in the Champions. I mean, you never know what they could do. It genuinely is a wild, wild world out there. So that's our aim for Season 6. We're going to be moving through things a little bit faster now. You'll notice this one's come along a lot quicker than the last one did. It should be sort of every 2 weeks, roughly, we'll be seeing recap videos, along with all the other stuff I am actually doing. It's a bit weird lately, isn't it? But yeah, we got the scouting stuff coming along. Got a couple of videos about games that actually aren't FMs coming up soon as well, along with a much bigger project, but we talk about that when it comes. So yes, join us over on stream, and have a lovely Sunday, because Jagiellonia are going to win the bloody Europa League. Cut back to me crying next stream when that doesn't happen. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.